The blood-soaked letter trembled in Vivian Cooper's hand as she struggled to read it through tears. The devastating news of her husband's death at the hands of outlaws, leaving her stranded in the unforgiving wilderness of Montana Territory, 1878, with nothing but a wagon, a dying horse, and a child growing in her womb. Vivian folded the crinkled paper containing the final words from the sheriff of Laramie explaining how Thomas had been gunned down while defending a stagecoach. 6 months of marriage was all they'd had before he left to earn money for their homestead and their coming baby. Now she was alone, 3 months pregnant, with winter approaching and supplies dwindling. She had been attempting to reach her late husband's brother's ranch near Bitterroot Valley when the wagon wheel had broken 2 days ago. Exhaustion and grief had overwhelmed her, and now fever gripped her body as she huddled under a threadbare blanket beneath a cottonwood tree. Her lips were cracked from dehydration, and she hadn't eaten in 2 days. "Please," she whispered, hand resting on her still small belly, "not for me, but for the baby." The harsh Montana landscape gave no reply as darkness crept across the sky. As consciousness slipped away, Vivian thought she heard hoofbeats, but she couldn't be certain if they were real or just another fever dream. Henry Ironwood had been tracking a mountain lion that had killed 3 of his calves when he spotted the broken-down wagon. At 32, he'd spent 15 years on his ranch, building it from nothing after the war into one of the most respected spreads in the territory. He'd never married, finding solace in the company of his ranch hands, his horses, and the mountains that surrounded his land. What in tarnation? He muttered, approaching cautiously. Raiders weren't uncommon, and he'd learned long ago to be wary of strangers. When he saw the woman lying beneath the cottonwood, he dismounted immediately. Her skin was burning hot to the touch, her breathing shallow. "Madam, madam, can you hear me?" He gently shook her shoulder, her eyes fluttered open briefly, revealing a startling shade of blue before closing again. "Hold on," he said, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "I'm going to help you." He searched through her wagon, finding few provisions and a letter that explained her situation. The woman was Vivian Cooper, widow of Thomas Cooper, heading to her brother-in-law's ranch near Bitterroot. "That's nearly 100 miles from here," Henry muttered to himself. With gentle hands, he lifted her onto his horse, securing her before him. The fever was concerning, and her extreme thinness worried him. He couldn't tell she was with child just by looking at her. "I'm taking you home, Mrs. Cooper," he said softly. "Just hold on." The journey back to his ranch took nearly 2 hours. By the time they arrived, the sun had set, and the lamplight from the windows of his modest but sturdy home glowed warmly in the darkness. His foreman, an older man named Caleb, rushed out to meet him. "Boss, what have you got there?" "Found her near death by Cooper Creek," Henry explained, carefully dismounting while holding Vivian. "She's burning up with fever. Send for Doc Wilson." "Doc's gone to Helena for supplies, won't be back for days." Henry's face hardened with determination. "Then we'll have to help her ourselves." He carried her into the house and laid her on his own bed, the only one suitable for someone so ill. His housekeeper, Martha, a stern but kind woman in her 60s who'd been with him since he built the place, immediately set about removing Vivian's mud-caked boots and outer clothing. "Lord have mercy," Martha exclaimed, her hands resting momentarily on Vivian's abdomen. "This poor girl's in the family way." Henry felt his throat tighten. "Are you certain?" Martha nodded gravely. 3, maybe 4 months along, I'd say. "We need to break her fever quick, or she'll lose the baby for sure." The next 48 hours were a blur of cool compresses, herbal teas forced between parched lips, and whispered prayers. Henry refused to leave her side except when Martha insisted on privacy to bathe the unconscious woman. He'd never been one for prayer, not since Gettysburg, but he found himself making deals with God as he watched the young widow struggle for her life and that of her unborn child. On the 3rd day, the fever broke. Henry had dozed off in a chair beside the bed when a soft voice woke him. "Where am I?" he started, blinking away sleep to find Vivian's blue eyes focused on him, confused but clear of fever. "You're safe, Mrs. Cooper," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "I'm Henry Ironwood. This is my ranch about 20 miles northeast of Clearwater Junction." Vivian tried to sit up, then winced and fell back. "Easy now," he cautioned. "You've been mighty sick." "My baby," she whispered, hands moving protectively to her stomach. "The little one's still holding on," Martha said, entering with a tray of broth. "But you need to get some strength back for both your sakes." Relief washed over Vivian's face, followed quickly by wariness. "I need to get to my brother-in-law's ranch. He's expecting me." "You aren't going anywhere for a while," Henry said firmly. "You nearly died out there." "Your wagon needs repairs and you're in no condition to travel." Tears welled in her eyes. "I have nothing to pay you with." "I'm not asking for payment, madam," Henry replied, unexpectedly touched by her vulnerability. "Just focus on getting well." Over the following week, Vivian's strength slowly returned. Martha helped her bathe and provided clean clothes that had belonged to Henry's sister during her visits. Though still weak, Vivian insisted on sitting up in a chair near the window, watching the ranch activities with interest. Henry found himself lingering in the house more than usual, making excuses to check on their guest. There was something about her quiet dignity in the face of such overwhelming tragedy that touched him deeply. "You have family waiting for you somewhere?" Vivian asked one evening as they shared a simple supper of beef stew and cornbread. Henry shook his head. "My parents passed before the war. My sister lives in San Francisco with her husband. The ranch hands are the closest thing to family I've got around here. You never married?" She asked, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, that's too personal." "No need for apologies," he assured her. "I came close once before the war. Elizabeth was her name. She couldn't wait for me, married a shopkeeper while I was fighting. When I came back, there didn't seem much point in looking again." "I understand," Vivian said softly. "Thomas and I had so little time together." In the flickering lamplight, Henry noticed the delicate curve of her cheek, the way her dark lashes cast shadows on her skin. Despite her grief and illness, she possessed a quiet beauty that stirred something long dormant within him. As October turned to November, Vivian's health improved dramatically. The sickness that had nearly taken her life retreated, and her pregnancy began to show more prominently. She insisted on helping Martha with household tasks, ignoring the older woman's protests. "I can't sit idle while you both work so hard," she declared. "Besides, it helps me not to think too much." Henry found her one morning in the kitchen, kneading bread dough with flour dusting her cheeks. The sight made his heart perform a strange little flip in his chest. "I sent a letter to your brother-in-law," he said, accepting the cup of coffee she offered. "Let him know you're safe but delayed." Vivian's hands stilled. "Thank you, though I'm not sure what reception I'll receive." "I never met William. Thomas said they weren't close." "Well, you're welcome to stay here until spring if need be," Henry found himself saying. "The mountain passes will be treacherous soon anyway." The first snow fell in late November, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. Vivian stood on the porch, wrapped in a heavy shawl, watching the flakes drift down with childlike wonder. "It never snowed like this in Kansas," she explained when Henry joined her. "It's beautiful, beautiful but dangerous," he replied. "This is just the beginning. By January, we could be buried in 6 feet of snow." She turned to him, her face serious. "I'm imposing on your hospitality far too long." "Nonsense," he said. "You've been a help, not a burden. Martha says you've organized the pantry better than it's ever been, and the men can't stop talking about your apple pies." A flush colored her cheeks. "It's the least I could do." "Besides," he continued, "you should be thinking about that baby, not traveling in winter." As if on cue, she gasped softly, hand going to her rounded belly. "What is it? Are you unwell?" Henry asked, alarmed. A smile spread across her face. "No, the baby just kicked. Would you like to feel it?" Before he could respond, she took his hand and placed it on the firm swell of her abdomen. For a moment, nothing happened, and then he felt it a definite push against his palm. "That's remarkable," he whispered, awed by the life growing beneath his hand. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something neither was ready to name. Henry stepped back first, clearing his throat. "I should check the stock before the snow gets worse," he said, retreating to safer ground. December brought Christmas, and despite Vivian's protests, Henry insisted on making it special. He rode 2 days through snow to the nearest town, returning with fabric for a new dress, candy, and a small wooden rocking horse for the baby. "You shouldn't have," Vivian said, tears in her eyes as she unwrapped the gifts. "Christmas is forgiving," he replied simply. That night, after a festive dinner with the ranch hands, Martha played carols on the old piano while everyone sang. Henry watched Vivian, her face glowing in the firelight, her voice clear and sweet as she sang Silent Night. In that moment, he realized his house had become a home again. In January, a blizzard isolated the ranch for nearly 2 weeks. Confined indoors, Henry and Vivian spent long evenings talking by the fire. She told him about growing up in Kansas, about meeting Thomas at a church social, about their dreams of building a life in Montana. "He was so excited about the baby," she said one night, hands cradling her now prominent belly. "He promised to be back before it was born." "He sounds like a good man," Henry said sincerely. "He was," she agreed, "kind and hardworking. We didn't have the chance to know each other as well as we should have before marrying, but I believed we would grow to love each other deeply over time." Her candor surprised him. "You didn't love him when you married. I cared for him," she said thoughtfully. "I respected him. Love was beginning, but my parents had arranged it and I was young, just 19. Thomas was 30 and established. It seemed sensible." Henry shared stories of his own, his childhood in Ohio, the horrors of war that still haunted him sometimes, his journey west to start anew, and the challenges of building his ranch. "You've created something beautiful here," Vivian told him. "You should be proud." "It's been lonely at times," he admitted. "A house needs a family to be complete." The words hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. In February, Vivian received a letter from her brother-in-law that changed everything. William Cooper had sold his ranch and moved to California. There would be no place for her or the baby. "I don't know what to do," she confessed to Henry, the letter crumpled in her hand. "I have nowhere to go. You could stay," he suggested, trying to keep his voice casual. "The ranch is doing well. There's plenty of room." "As what, Henry?" "Your housekeeper, your charity case." The words were bitter, but her eyes were frightened. "As my wife, if you'd consider it," he said, the words surprising even himself. "I know it's sudden and your heart still belongs to Thomas. I'm not asking for love, Vivian, just companionship. A chance to help you and your child." Her eyes widened. "You can't mean that." "I do," he said, more certain with each word. "I care for you. I'd provide for you both, give the child my name. In time, perhaps we could find happiness together." "I need to think," she whispered, retreating to her room. Henry didn't press her. He understood the magnitude of what he was asking. For 3 days, Vivian kept largely to herself, though he caught her watching him sometimes with thoughtful eyes. On the 4th day, as they sat at breakfast, she spoke. "If I agreed," she said carefully, "I would want certain things understood. This would be a marriage of convenience, at least at first. I won't pretend feelings I don't have." "I wouldn't ask you to," Henry replied, hope rising in his chest. "And the baby would know about Thomas. Would that bother you?" "Of course not. It's right that the child knows about their father." She nodded, considering. "I would try to be a good wife to you, Henry." "Is that a yes?" he asked, hardly daring to believe. "It is," she said softly. "For practical reasons, but also because I've grown to respect you deeply these past months." They were married by a circuit preacher in March, a simple ceremony with the ranch hands and Martha as witnesses. Henry had offered to wait until after the baby was born, but Vivian had declined. "The child should have your name from the start," she'd insisted. Their wedding night was chaste. Henry made up a bed for himself in his study, giving Vivian privacy. Though the arrangement wasn't what most would expect of newlyweds, it suited them both as they navigated their new relationship. As April brought the first signs of spring, Vivian's time drew near. Henry found himself increasingly anxious, having Martha prepare the house and riding to town himself to ensure the doctor would come when needed. "You're fussing worse than a mother hen," Vivian teased him one evening as he insisted on rubbing her swollen feet. "I just want everything to be perfect," he admitted. "Nothing about birth is perfect," she said with practical wisdom. "It's messy and painful and wonderful all at once." Her labor began on a stormy night in late April. Martha sent for the doctor while Henry paced outside the bedroom door, flinching at each cry of pain from within. After 12 grueling hours, Martha emerged, weary but smiling. "You have a daughter, Mr. Ironwood, and your wife is asking for you." Henry entered the room hesitantly. Vivian lay propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, a tiny bundle in her arms. "Come meet her," she said, her voice hoarse from exertion. He approached slowly, overwhelmed by the sight of the infant's perfect, tiny face. "She has Thomas's chin," Vivian said softly, "but I think she has your eyes." The words struck him deeply. "My eyes. I hope you don't mind that I named her Hannah," Vivian continued. "It was my grandmother's name." "It's beautiful," he managed, too moved to say more. "Would you like to hold her?" Vivian asked, carefully, as if handling the most precious thing in the world. Henry took the newborn into his arms. Looking down at the tiny face, he felt his heart expand with a love so fierce it nearly brought him to his knees. "Hello, Hannah," he whispered. "I'm going to be your pa." When he looked up, he found Vivian watching him with tears in her eyes. "You truly don't mind raising another man's child?" "She's not just another man's child," Henry said firmly. "She's your daughter, and now she's mine too, if you'll allow it." "I've been thinking," Vivian said hesitantly. "If you still want it, I'd like this to be a real marriage, Henry, not just for Hannah's sake, but for ours." He searched her face. "Are you certain? These past months, you've shown me what a good man you are, kind, honorable, patient. I didn't expect to feel this way again so soon, but I care for you, Henry, deeply." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, still cradling Hannah. "I think I've been falling in love with you since the moment you opened your eyes and asked where you were." "Even though I was half dead and carrying another man's child?" she asked with a small smile. "Especially then," he said. "Your courage astounded me, it still does." With his free hand, he reached for hers. "I want you to know that I'll never try to replace Thomas in your heart or in Hannah's life." "Thomas will always be part of us," she agreed, "but there's room in my heart for a new love, for you." Their first real kiss as husband and wife was gentle, mindful of Vivian's exhaustion but filled with promise. The ranch flourished that summer, as did their small family. Henry built a cradle for Hannah with his own hands, and each evening he would rock her while telling stories of brave cowboys and beautiful horses. Vivian often found herself watching them together, her heart full. By Hannah's first birthday, Vivian was expecting again. This time, the pregnancy was celebrated from the start, with Henry hovering protectively and the entire ranch participating in the anticipation. "You've given me more than I ever dreamed possible," Henry told her one evening as they sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Hannah slept peacefully against his chest while Vivian leaned into his side, his hand resting on her growing belly. "I could say the same," she replied. "When you found me, I thought my life was over. I couldn't imagine being happy again. And now," she smiled up at him, "now I can't imagine being anywhere else but here with you." In September of 1880, their son James was born, followed 2 years later by another daughter, Elizabeth. The Ironwood Ranch became known throughout the territory not just for its fine cattle, but for its hospitality and the evident happiness of its owners. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Henry presented Vivian with a locket containing miniature portraits of all 3 children. "I have something for you too," she said, handing him a small package. Inside was a framed photograph of their family, Henry and Vivian seated, with 7-year-old Hannah standing proudly beside them, 4-year-old James on Henry's lap, and 2-year-old Elizabeth on Vivian's. "I had it taken last time we were in Helena," she explained. "I wanted you to have something to show how far we've come." Henry studied the photograph, emotion tightening his throat. "We make a fine family, Mrs. Ironwood. We do indeed, Mr. Ironwood." That night, after the children were asleep, they lay together in the darkness, talking softly of the future. "Do you ever regret it?" Henry asked. "Marrying me when you did?" "Never," she said without hesitation. "It may have started as practicality, but it quickly became so much more." "I thank God every day for leading me to you," he said, pulling her close, "even if it was under such dire circumstances." Sometimes the greatest blessings come from the darkest moments, Vivian replied, resting her head on his chest. I lost so much, but I found you. Found this life we've built together. In the years that followed, as the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the Ironwood family remained a cornerstone of the community. Hannah grew into a strong-willed young woman with her mother's compassion and her adoptive father's determination. Though she knew the truth of her birth, she never doubted her place in the family or Henry's love for her. The ranch expanded, weathering economic downturns and natural disasters through the family's resilience and hard work. Henry and Vivian grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. On their 30th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Henry raised a glass in toast to his wife. To Vivian, he said, his voice still strong despite his 62 years. Who taught me that second chances are sometimes the best ones. And to Henry, she responded, the years having added silver to her hair but not dimmed the light in her eyes. Who found a half-dead widow and saw a future instead. That night, as the celebration wound down, they stood together on the same porch where they had watched countless sunsets. You remember what you said to me when Hannah was born? Vivian asked, her hand warm in his. Henry smiled. I believe I said quite a few things that day. You said she wasn't just another man's child, she was your daughter too. And so she has been, he affirmed. I couldn't love her more if she were my own flesh and blood. That's when I knew for certain I would love you for the rest of my life, Vivian said softly. A man who could open his heart that way was a man worth loving forever. Well then, Mrs. Ironwood, Henry said, pulling her close, forever it shall be. As the stars appeared above the Montana mountains, they remained on the porch, two souls who had found each other in the unlikeliest of circumstances, and built a life neither could have imagined in those desperate early days. Their story, which began with near tragedy, had become one of enduring love, proof that even in the harshest wilderness, the human heart could not only survive but flourish.